All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Shira Litzar, happy to be your host, along with my colleagues Vern Schellinger and Alki Thompson. We are delighted to have you here and answer your job search questions and see how else we can help you. Who would like to kick us off with a question? It could be on any topic you like. We will do our best to address it. Who'd like to start? Matt, you look like you have a question.
I actually don't. I was curious to kind of see where people were at. So I've been I've been on a job search now for for several months. I was laid off and I started working on my certification. Well, I continued working on my certification. I really focused on that. And then it was completed in January. Since then, I kind of really focused on my job search and I found the best thing, the most, I guess, impactful searches that I have done have been in person. So I have made some connections online, but I've really enjoyed going to events and meeting people in person and kind of
Yeah.
creating that network. I'm newer to the area where I'm at. I'm upstate New York, in the Rochester area. I moved here from Michigan. Um, so I mean, I don't, I guess any tips, I'm just kind of, trying to see what people are doing, what's been successful for them, and comparing it to what I've done and what's worked for me, what hasn't worked for me. I do have a couple of interviews in process, so yep, just here to
I'm curious
kind of listen.
before the three of us start opining on networking, which we love to do. I'm sort of curious, Matt. Couple things. What profession and or sector are you in? A and B. What kind of networking events did you attend where you found there was good success?
Thank you for asking. So I'm a talent recruiter and HR specialist. That's my specialty. More recently, I finished a master's degree and then my SHRM certification. So kind of really focusing to, broaden my skills, touch a little bit more within the HR space. But that's kind of where my focus is. And so I have attended some HR events, but also just some
Local
business
SHRM
network
events.
SHRM events. Yeah, there's online SHRM events. However, I noticed in my area, the NHRA is more active. They have a lot more events going on here, which is National Human Resources Association. So I've actually kind of been to more of those events, and I'm trying to find more SHRM things. There is an online event I'm going to, which is more of like a kind of ongoing education type of event. But other than that, I have not seen other SHRM events.
Well, I'm so glad you kicked this off with this topic, Matt, because networking is very near and dear to me and Vern and Alki. And this, what you just talked about, I think is something we should lean into a little bit today. We don't normally do this in this way because so for so many years, actually, this call started right at the beginning of COVID. For those who don't know, I started this in August of 2020. Okay, so that entire time until now, right, we've all been virtual, virtual, virtual. But as we all know, there was more and more people coming back in person. And I think, Matt, what you're talking about here is so important for us to remember. We gotta get out of the house. We gotta meet people face to face. There's nothing like it. And so, what I'd like to do is spend a minute actually talking about the types of networking groups that could be very beneficial for folks on this call. And the first one is actually to the point that you just made, and that's around associations. So, for those of you who don't know, there's a whole sector out there, the associate called the association community. These are membership organizations and they fall into basically two categories, what's called trade associations, which have member companies, and professional societies, which are individual membership organizations for professionals, like human resources professionals or accountants or real estate agents or whatever. There's thousands and thousands of these organizations. I mention this because many, not all, many of these professional societies, these individual membership organizations, have local chapters, particularly in the DC area, but all around the country. They can be fabulous places to network, not only to show up and just sort of, as I like to say, shake a hand and kiss a baby, right? And meet people, but also to volunteer, to get on committees, maybe even get on the board, to really kind of get to know your colleagues in a deeper way by volunteering. And I know this is actually how Vern and I know each other. So Vern and I used to be part of a local group called the HR Leadership Forum. We both served as volunteer leaders there. We got to know each other very well, really became good friends. Then Vern moved away to Florida, and 10 years, I think it was like 10 years prior to us reconnecting, and somebody on this call a few years ago reconnected us, and it was like old home week for us. And Vern's been on this call ever since. But my point is, it was in one of those meetings that Vern and I became great colleagues. Okay. And that happens all over the place. And there's just something about that experience that's very, very rich, even beyond just your job search, right? To really be part of a collegial community. So I want to just kind of riff off of that. And for those of you who don't know what association you should be going after, I will give you a very easy tip. I've done this with some of my coaching clients to great success, and that is as follows. I want you to take your profession. It could be even your sector. I call it lane and community. Your lane is your profession, your sector, your community is your sector. And you can actually put that word or maybe a couple words in Google, just a regular Google search, and put the word association or even the word society after it, hit enter and see what happens. So, for example, someone like Monica, which I'm sure she knows, Monica's in the marketing world. She's also in the international development world, but her lane is marketing. And I know I'm sure Monica knows that there's a national organization called the American Marketing Association, right? And there's also local chapters for the AMA, right? But if Monica didn't know that, literally she could put in Google marketing and association and AMA would come up. And there's all kinds of things that are like that. So once I was working recently, I was working with a coaching client, and we figured out that she really wanted to get into like performance improvement, process improvement. So I put performance improvement in Google, hit association, and what came up? The International Society of Performance Improvement. Like there are all of these groups out there that you may have no idea about that are in your world, right? And where you could actually start to lean in, both virtually, but to Matt's point, in person. Okay. So that's one kind of sector, right? The association sector that I would encourage you all to be thinking about. In addition to that, there are plenty of groups, if you will, offline, meaning outside of the association world where your colleagues are connecting. It's sort of what I'd call like the hidden networking market. And a lot of the ways you find out about those groups are actually to ask your colleagues. So I'll give you an example. I happen to lead one of those groups for association CEOs. I've been doing that for a really long time. And I do that sort of off the grid. It's not connected to a national association. It's just my own little group, but nobody would know about it unless you knew about it, right? So some of the people in that group have found out about this group because they asked their colleagues. Their colleagues that go to Shira's group. And groups like mine are happening all over the place in all kinds of sectors. So what I would encourage you all to do is to regularly ask your colleagues, meaning the people who do what you do, and or either they're in your lane and or in your community, and say, hey, do you belong to any networking groups in our space? You will be surprised. People attend meetup groups. They attend, maybe there are people who have their own little groups that they form. For example, a few years ago, there was a group that formed off of this group. It was just for IT people. There were like 3 or 4 IT people that just sort of did their own thing, and they started meeting informally, right? They just did it, right? And that was under the radar, but you wouldn't have known about the group unless you knew about the group. So I really want to encourage you all to be thinking about tapping into your cause. And oh, by the way, you can start your own networking group. So easy. So easy. You literally, and actually it's how I started my little association group. You literally go online, go to LinkedIn. First of all, start looking at your first level contacts, the people who do what you do, but you can go to your second levels too. And you can start looking for your colleagues and just type them a note. Say, hey, I'm starting a networking group for people like us, right? Would you like to join? Free little group. Let's meet once every other week or whatever. And you just facilitate a group. And it doesn't have to be about job search. It could just be about what's going on in the profession, best practices and trends, professional trends, sectoral trends, whatever, and just have a collegial group. It happens all the time. People love to get together, right? Love to convene, but they need somebody to bring them together. Like you're here today because me and Alki and Vern do this. Well, you can do that too, and very informally, and you'll be amazed at how many wonderful synergies can be made, not just for you and your job search, but for your colleagues. So that's my big speech about networking. Love to hear from Vern and Alki if they have other ideas or want to riff off of anything that I said, because I
Yeah.
think networking is just a great thing.
Yeah,
especially.
let me jump in. Matt grew up in Syracuse, New York, so I know where you are. Okay, pretty much. I have relatives in Rochester. Um, in addition to ATD, right? And that's or you're
Oh,
looking you've been looking in for the SHRM chapters, right?
Yes, so recently I connected on LinkedIn with the president of the SHRM chapter in Genesee Valley.
Okay.
But I've been more in contact with the NHRA, the local chapter here from NHRA. They've been more active with events. So
Okay. All right. Well, I would continue to try to pursue the SHRM, as you said, if you're a talent, if you're a talent recruiter and that type of thing, obviously that that's a place to be. But you might also look for the Association for Talent Development, and maybe if there's a chapter in Rochester, attend at least one of those meetings and see, if because again, people in learning and development are also in, the talent development world. And so that, and of course they're connected to people in human resources. So even a talent development person may introduce you to somebody in the HR world. So that's just a couple of other suggestions add to what Shira said, and Shira's covered it all pretty well. Elke, anything to add?
Yeah, feel free, Matt, to connect with me. It's been a while ago, but I used to work for an organization with colleagues in upstate New York. So um, they're not in HR, but they are somewhere, and who knows what can come out of that. And then for everybody else on the call, just to reiterate what Shira said and what we're highlighting here is, of course, efficiency, network online, do all the online connecting, LinkedIn, emails, but even I have found time in the last couple of weeks to go to some things in person, and it's no comparison. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but in the job search or just getting connections, people respond a lot better in person. I'm finding in the last 2 to 3 weeks, just a few events that I've attended, networking events, walking away with a handful of business cards compared to just individually meeting people one-on-one. It's more bang for your buck. And they also get a chance to meet you in person. It's nothing like a live handshake and a face-to-face to build trust and to make someone want to reach out to their friends or their contacts on your behalf. The energy is kind of indescribable. And I'm saying this because I had taken a break from a lot of events. And now that I'm kind of getting back into the swing of things, I can't describe the energy and the power of
Huge.
these new faces and places. I mean, I feel bad because I can't follow up with everyone, and I'm doing a pretty good job, and I'm not able to follow up with everyone, but they're introducing me to people. Other people are introducing out of those. It's just the electricity that happens. You meet a person, they introduce you to somebody else, they introduce you to somebody else. And so just a reminder for everybody, every now and then get up from the computer and go to a live event.
Yeah.
Huge, hugely important. So Matt, I'm so glad that you brought that up. We just haven't, I don't even know when the last time was we talked about something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
the in-person is nothing like it. So
Yeah.
great. Well, thank you, Matt, for that good kickoff. Who else has a question or a topic? Julie.
I just wanted to follow up on what Alki said. I went to a women's bar event last night, and I went there to I volunteered because I'm in transition, and I saw some people I knew from before and didn't realize we weren't connected on LinkedIn, and we knew mutual people, and then I met new people, and because there was a dinner, and the person I sat next to, she introduced me to a couple of the people. I met some of the people at my table, and the one who sat next to me said, let me know if you need to, have coffee, you want to meet up for coffee or anything. So it is true, at least for me, meeting people in person. I do better in person than online. I'm not very good online. It's very strange. A lot of people say they're really great online, but I'm not. Um, it's just because I have an ability to connect with people, and it's just a little clunky or awkward online to me. But I did have a question. Um, is the here in the DC area, I mean, law firms are out. I mean, there's a whole discussion about that because if people aren't aware, the law firms are under attack, basically in the DC area by the administration. And is the job market in the DC area, I mean, are people still really hiring? Um, like I'm trying to go in-house because, well, I did have an interview on Wednesday, which I hope I get. I really think I did well. Maybe I should back up and ask. I have two questions about the job market, and then um, I had an interview on Wednesday, and I knew one of the interview panelists. I had met. I worked with her before, and I found the job. I don't know how I found the job. Honestly, I can't tell you. Um, but then I did apply, and I talked to her before I applied, and she had just, I was doing research and discovered that she was kind of high up in the front office of that place, and it's in Congress. And and so I t met with her for coffee. She'd only been in her job for 2 months, but she'd already spoken to her boss, who was the hiring manager. So he knew about me, and she didn't know the process. She didn't know if she was going to be involved, but she would let me know and get back to me. So I thanked her, sent her a thank you note. She thanked me for my flexibility in response and said she would forward my name for the interview to whoever those folks were. So following day, I said, I appreciate the information, additional information. Later on, I got a call for the interview, to schedule an interview. I had that interview last Wednesday. Um, I think it went really well. I'm hoping she is championing my application, but I really don't know. And it is, they were interviewing more people this week, and they're going to decide next week. Um, And I already did all my thank you notes, and I even thanked the administrative folks that, assisted me for the interview. How do I know if the person is championing my application? I mean, are people more likely to hire someone they know versus else that may look great, but they don't really know them? Like, I mean, I mean, I'm not a hiring manager. I've been in the hiring process to hire people, but I was never the ultimate hiring manager. What is your take on that?
So
And that,
we have a whole speech on that. Actually.
oh, I didn't realize it was such a long question.
It's
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it for it to
No,
be
no,
such a long question.
we have a whole speech as a response to your question because
Oh,
we
Actually,
had
there's
not that you gave a
lot
speech.
of different.
We have a speech. We can answer your question very fully, Julie. The three of us, because this is something that we talk about a lot, is the whole, finding an internal champion. And I could go on my own speech. Vern, I'll just tee this over to you if you want to kick us off.
Well, in terms of your actual question, how do you know if this person is championing you? Um, the only way I mean, how well do you know this person? And if you know them well and they know you well, then more than likely they are championing your response. Um, I've said this on the call before. My experience personally has been in two different jobs. There was an internal champion. In fact, in one job, it was the recruiter. The recruiter called me and said, "I want you to be a candidate." And lo and behold, I got that job. It sounds like you've done a lot of the right things, Julie. So, but as we often say in this call, the actual hiring decision, sometimes it comes down to the most minor things. You've got two great candidates, and who do we choose? And hopefully, you will get the offer. So I'll stop there and let Elke or Shira
Alki, you want to
join.
chime in first?
Yeah, the how do you know question, I was gonna say you only know until you find out when they tell you that, hey, I passed your
well, that
resume
makes
on.
sense.
Or
Right.
the hiring manager says, yeah, XYZ told me about you and had some good things to say. So you definitely won't know. To Vern's point, you can guess. Or if they confirm, like, yeah, I put your resume on his desk this morning and we had a small chat about you. That's the only way you can confirm that. Um, Are people still hiring? Yes. It's a crazy world out there, job market wise right now, but a lot of people are still hiring. People are definitely hiring. It feels strange on if you're just applying online though, because not a lot of people are giving feedback or responding or getting back to you. So it feels like, and I've had a lot of other candidates ask too, are they still hiring out there with everything that's going on?
Yes,
So I
they
just
are.
wanted to chime in on those points and say yes, and let Shira take the
Yeah,
rest.
they absolutely, yeah, I'll riff off of that one, then I'll go back to the networking thing. Yeah, so they absolutely are. And as I've been saying to people recently, it's not that all the money in this country has disappeared, it's just changing hands. Okay.
That's so true.
That's what's happening. Money has not disappeared from the banks. It's just changing hands. So there are plenty of people that are still hiring. There are plenty of people who maybe are on pause for now, just sort of in wait and see mode, and will start to hire again. I liken these last few months, as I'm sure others have referred to this as a bit of an earthquake, right? The earth is still quaking. It's not quaking quite as much as it was like, February, whatever, when all this started. Um, but it's not done yet, but it's settling out a little bit, only in that people are not as shocked anymore. Okay, we're like, okay, we're in the thing, and people are now trying to start to navigate the thing. Where do I fit in, and all that depends on sector, and it depends on just a host of factors, right? It's not, for example, it's not that all nonprofits are going away, or all NGOs are going away, or all law firms are not going to hire. Like, it's not that. There are definitely, in every sector, there are still organizations that are hiring for whatever reason. Again, maybe a little less right now. Maybe, yes, there are definitely places that have closed, but there's still hiring to be had. Why? Because organizations still need to function. Even if it's at a smaller capacity, if the ones who are still alive want to stay alive, and they're going to be hiring people who are going to help them do that. All right. So we can't make generalities here. We can't say everybody's everything, but we can say there are people that are hiring. So I'll just say that. As far as the kind of, well, again, what we call the internal champion, let me kind of do a continuum for everybody. And I know, Julie, you have a specific situation with a specific person who referred you, and I'm just going to broaden this out a little bit. So I want us to all walk a mile in the employer's shoes for a minute. Okay, I want us to all pretend that we are the hiring manager. We are risk averse. It's very risky I want people to really understand this, how risky it is to make a full-time hire. Extremely so. There are labor, and Matt knows this, me, Alki, Vern, all of us in HR, we know this. The labor laws that are involved, how expensive it is to hire, how challenging it is when you onboard and you have to retain, and there's performance issues and there's culture issues. You're bringing someone into your family. You really want to make sure this person's going to be the right fit. You are under compliance from the federal government and state and local. I mean, it's a thing. It's very expensive to hire people, not just the recruitment cost, but it's costs 30 to 40% on top of somebody's salary for benefits. I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's a reason why people are in HR, because there's such risk involved with making a full-time hire. So with that said, now how do you minimize your risk, says the hiring manager? Well, of course, one of the ways is, right, you vet on skills, you vet on culture fit, you vet on sectoral knowledge, you want somebody who's going to have a minimal learning curve, all of those things. And then there's the relationship factor. So if you start on the one extreme, right, where you have a resume where it's completely sight unseen, you don't know this person, they're quote unquote off the street, right? It's very risky. Not to say those people don't get hired, they do, but it's much more risk because you don't know the person, nothing about them. And then you kind of move over a step, and now it's somebody who referred you a resume from somebody you trust, but that person, we'll call that person Susie. Susie refers Julie, but Susie may not happen to know Julie well. Susie and Julie are just, LinkedIn connections, for example. Okay. It's still, we'll get the resume flagged to the hiring manager, but not necessarily a full recommendation because Susie doesn't happen to know Julie. And then you move over a level. Now it's a different kind of Susie. Susie actually knows Julie, right? And trusts Julie. Now, Susie does not work at the company, but she's a colleague who knows somebody at the company, and she can say to her hiring manager friend, hey, I know Julie, I trust her, she's great. I want to actually recommend her for this search. And then there's somebody who actually works internal to the company. And that internal person hopefully is even more trusted by the hiring manager because that hiring manager works with that person. And then there's the whole relationship to Julie. Now, what is that relationship? Is it just that Susie knows Julie sort of collegially, or did Susie actually work with Julie? That's actually one of the strongest recommendations you could ever get is somebody who's been your colleague, who's worked with you, who either is external to the company and refers you in or internal to the company. I'm working with someone right now, a coaching client, and his name is Matt, and Matt he's in a job search right now. He was referred into that company by his former colleague. I think the guy was his boss, who now works at that and literally pulled Matt into the hiring process. When that happens, there's nothing like it, right? Because talk about the person is trusted, the person trusts you, knows your work. I mean, the risk goes down and down and down and down. Okay. And then on top of that, if you are known by reputation, let's say you're staying in the same sector and you're just sort of known, right, in the community. Again, it's just your reputation shows up before your resume. So Julie, I say all of that as sort of a continuum because a lot of that depends on your relationship to the person, their relationship to you, their relationship to the organization. All those things can matter in terms of how much your candidacy is championed. And then all the way to the end, now to your actual question, to Alki's point, like, how do you know? You're going to know when you know. So we don't know what's happening. So for example, my client, Matt, his former boss or whoever was named Todd, who works at the company, I don't know. Is Todd talking to the hiring manager now about Matt? Maybe. But really, at the end of the day, what happens is once you actually interview, now you're standing on the strength of your own candidacy. Now you have done the interview, you've put yourself out there, somebody has referred you in, you have just demonstrated your skills to whatever extent you have. Yes, hopefully somebody on the back end is still rooting for you, but really now you're standing on your own 2 feet. You're the one who's presented yourself. And so hopefully that unto itself is really going to be the thing that gets you to go forward. So hopefully that little speech, helped to.
Yeah. So,
Well, no,
so
I
let
mean,
me,
that
let
is
me,
helpful because like she said that she was going to forward my name to the folks setting up interviews.
Mhm.
And she did speak to the hiring manager to find out what is supposed to be done if she knows a candidate.
Right.
So I think those two things um, were really helpful.
At least help to get you the interview. Now,
Yeah.
how much she can actually champion your candidacy once you're in, it just depends. We don't know her
Right.
relationship to them and there's all these little back end sort of machinations. But at the very least, she got you in the door, which is half the battle, is just getting noticed. And then,
But isn't it true, at least in my mind, that if you have two really good candidates and someone on the interview panel knows one of them, you're going to most likely pick the person that
it
you
could
already
be.
Sure.
know?
It could be. I'm not even going to say most likely. There's so many variables. It's certainly helpful, but it's not necessarily a guarantee by any stretch. It could just be, yeah, I know so and so. And by the way, it can also work to the other side of things, right? Because sometimes people know people and like, oh, I work with them. I didn't have a great experience. So that
Oh
can
yeah.
happen too, right? Where it's a little too close for comfort. Sometimes actually
Mhm.
being an unknown can be very helpful because then there's no baggage, right?
yeah.
So both sides can be the case.
Yeah. The example I mentioned earlier, the person I worked for the person for 4 years, she became an executive coach. And then the organization she was doing executive coaching in hired her to do the search. So talk about, when they ask, well, what can you tell me about Vern? I worked for her. She could tell them exactly what my accomplishments were, how I worked, what my communication style was. So that's to the extreme of someone who knows you really, really well. And it really came down to myself and another candidate. There was two finalists, and I really do believe I got the nod based on, having worked for this person for a long time. But that's such a rare occurrence. That was just, I mean, that can happen, but it's not something that would happen all the time. That's for sure.
And this isn't just for Julie, but listening to Shira a second ago, I think I counted the word trust about 6, 7, or 8 times. Um, trust, either applying for a job or being referred and introduced, a large part of it is about trust, whether it's trusting you, the person, trusting your background, trusting your ability to do the current job that they're interviewing you for, trusting that your output is going to be the type of output that they need over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years or whatever. It's trust throughout. Trust of, and I sat in this seat a lot where I introduced a candidate to the hiring manager after I did the first level screen. Like there's levels to this process. I wrote down while Shira was talking, the beginning, the middle, and the end. The part Shira was just referencing was just getting in the door. Right now we talk to a lot of people about just getting that first interview, instead of just applying, like actually getting an interview. And we talk a lot on this call about networking your way to make sure that you get a conversation. And we really focus there a lot just on getting in the door, but then there's other parts too. Like there's the next interview, then there's the panel interview with the team in the department that you might be working with. Everyone is meeting with you, and at the end of the day, they're leaning back and they're going, okay, now let me just think about this candidate I just spoke to. How much do I trust what they told me, number one, is true? Um, how much do I trust their ability to do the job? Because I've got to now decide whether or not I'm going to recommend them to the next phase up. And my name is on the line when I share a candidate. So it's trust throughout. And when you just apply online, you don't have that introduction, and it's not a bad thing to just apply blindly online. But this process that we're talking about is a process that we do. I can speak to Shira and I as headhunters. We have relationships with hiring managers. We discuss their job opportunity, their vacancy, up and down, left and right, through and through, this detail, salary, how far can you go? How far can you not go? 8 years of experience, is it really eight or do you only want five? We talk this thing all the way through. And when we finally leave each other and start our search, they now trust us. And that's not even full if it's a new relationship, but this whole thing is about trust. And when we do present candidates, they trust that we listen to them for all of their needs, all of their wants. We trust that we're going to give them somebody with a qualification, somebody who can do the job, and somebody who fits the organization as well. So it's a lot about trust. It's not just, this job search process and how can I get an interview. That risk that Shira was talking about, they're trying to lower that risk. And so the candidate that they decide on, to your question, Julie, yeah, sometimes it could be that they know someone. Other times it could just be, well, she's a great candidate, but this other candidate fits better. And that's the stranger. That's the strange candidate. We knew her, she was referred. That's great. But this other candidate just that much better. And so at the end of the day, trust gets you in the door, it gets you the offer. Um, and you want to try to assuage as many of their fears as you possibly can. And you do that by one way to do that is networking and relationships. And last thing I'll say is talking about finding somebody to champion your candidacy. We don't have time on this call, and I'm not going to take the time on this call while I'm talking to do it. But there's so much that we do as headhunters. So many questions we ask people. We ask, "Hey, when can I expect to hear something back?" Those are the types of things you should be doing when you do say, "Hey, can you put a word in?" Then you can ask, "Hey, who do you know? Do you know this department? Do you know that department? When can I expect to hear something back? Maybe when do you think you can get back to me by Tuesday or Monday, just to let me know how it went? If there's anything else that I can add." It's an ongoing conversation, which also builds trust. And that's also how you kind of track your candidacy too.
I mean, that was something that the hiring manager said. He said, I want somebody who I can trust in response to one of my questions. But I mean, there's no way it wasn't a question they asked me, and there's obviously no way I can actually,
Yeah,
you know,
demonstrate that.
Demonstrate
yeah,
trust.
because it's sort of like if someone says, "Oh, trust me," or "I'm honest with you." It's like, okay, if you have to tell me that you need to
Right.
trust me, does that mean before you weren't being honest or I
Right.
wasn't supposed to trust you? So, you can't really say those things.
Yeah. There are sometimes there are ways you can demonstrate it by sharing examples of times where you really went the extra mile for colleagues and demonstrated trust in the sense of responsiveness or dependability, reliability, ethics, things like that. If there are ways that you can showcase that in your stories, the trust factor hopefully will be raised. Like, oh, this is a dependable person. This is someone who follows through. She's a woman of her word. Those kinds of things. If you in your storytelling, sometimes you can demonstrate that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it. And thank you for telling me people are still hiring. It's just in
Oh yeah.
my sector. I went to an event last night and yeah, it was really tough. I guess I have one follow-up question. I know we're supposed to apply for jobs. I know women don't apply unless we have like 95% of the stuff that they demand or say is required, while men do like 65 or something. So, how do you deal with that gap if I am only like 70% qualified and it says must have, must have, must have, like everything says must have. And I'm like, I don't think you're going to find someone who has must have on all those categories. That's a lot of different stuff.
It's always a tricky question because as when a job is posted online, let me just say that when a job is posted online, that employer is often looking for a unicorn candidate, and they've listed everything they want, as I like to say, 12 out of 10 skills. I didn't just misspeak. They want 12 out of 10 skills. Okay. And they're asking for the unicorn. I'm not saying they're going to get the unicorn, but they're asking for it. Um, well, it's a free country and anybody can apply for anything. We do have to remember that when the job poster says it, they mean it. Yes, there can be some flexibility, but generally, when they say it, that's what they want. So and I forget the 65%, 95%, whatever, whoever the person is, right? If you're going to apply for a job where you do not meet most of those must-haves, you better manage your expectations because chances are you're not going to get called in. I mean, and especially if you don't have an internal champion. So it's not that you can't apply, but you have to understand that when they say it, they mean it because they are risk averse. And when they post online, they're now getting tons and tons and tons of responses, and they can go in and pick, right, those unicorn candidates. It's just a really, really competitive market, not just today. I mean, yes, especially today, but even pre-February, right? Pre-January. It was that way. It was very common then, and more so now, for employers to get 100 to 200 responses in the first 24 to 48 hours when they post a job online. This is why we on this call do not recommend people spend most of their time on the job boards. Please do not spend most of your time on the job boards. Spend most of your time networking. Networking with people who know you, like you, and trust you, who can share those hidden opportunities, who can champion your candidacy, who can get you creative hires. Right? There are plenty of positions out there that are not being posted. They're barely a twinkle in somebody's eye, right? Meaning it's an employer who has a need, but all of a sudden Julie comes through their network, and Julie is this amazing candidate, has all these superpowers, is referred in just networking to an employer, and they're like, oh, she's a subject matter expert in this and da 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 da. Oh, I think we could use her here. There's no job posting, there's no nothing. It's just like, we need Julie. Matt's shaking his head, right? We know what this is like as recruiters, like, oh, there's this, we call it the creative hire. The creative hire. Years ago, and Monica, I do see your hands, so thank you for being patient. Years ago, I coached this woman named Allison. Allison came, she was actually a corporate marketing executive in a major hospitality chain. And she said, oh, I really want to work for a nonprofit. I was like, okay, well, let me teach you what's like to work for a nonprofit. She's like, no, I really want, I'm like, okay, great. She networked her way to a chief executive at the USO, the military, right? USO. And the USO talked to this woman, my client, and said, oh, we love your corporate background. Why? Because we want to engage the next generation of military professionals to be attracted to the USO because they don't know about us. And this woman, my client, had worked with Unilever and she'd worked with all these brands and all this stuff. And she was really great at attracting next generation. They hired her. They created a job for her. No job posting, no, because of her particular skills and their particular needs, they created a job. This happens all the time. all the time. But it happens when you network, it happens when you have colleagues that know you, or in her case, she, got introduced to this woman and showcased her skills. It can happen lots and lots of ways, but it's beyond the job boards. The job board should only be no more than 10% of your job search, no more than 10%. 90% should be networking with your colleagues who know you, who know your skills, and who can champion your candidacy and hopefully get you some sort of creative hire. So that's what we're always sort of pushing here, because all of us, me, Vern, Alki, now Matt, we know he's in recruiting. We've seen this kind of thing happen a lot. So hope that helps.
Yeah,
Thank you so
everybody should
much.
be aware of what Shira and Elke and I know, and many of you may know. It's called a hidden job market.
Mhm.
It's not posted anywhere.
No, no,
And the only way that you find out about those opportunities is someone in your network tells you about them.
that's right.
And three of my jobs came from the hidden job market. The example I gave you earlier, where my boss was recruiting for the job, I wasn't looking for a job. She called me and said, I want you to be a candidate. I didn't even know that the job existed. And my first response was, I got a job. I'm happy. I don't know if I really want this job. But the more I learned about the job, the more excited I got about it, and I got the offer. But that would have never happened unless she reached out to me. So,
Yeah. Keep networking.
I just
yep,
wanted to thank you all.
Yeah, sure. It's
yep.
been good for everybody. All right, Monica, you've been patient.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Alki was saying earlier about trust. In a different careers coaching group, I've been warned about, you know, I guess I don't know how to phrase it, supporting the Trump line about the necessity of imploding USAID, which I strongly disagree with. I think if we were going to implode USAID, we needed to do like a 6-month phase out to let other donors pick up the slack. And then there's all this disinformation about USAID out there. And then another employer that I've had that I really like, I completely trust the leadership. It was Wikistrat. They though were somehow the victim of disinformation similar to what USAID has been facing recently. And so my question is, when you're building trust in an interview situation, I mean, how do you speak your truth in a in a truthful way that is politically neutral, but is true and stands with what you know? And you assume that the people you're talking to are informed. And I suppose if you're, if I ended up in some place where people were adamantly supporting cutting USAID, I probably don't want to work there. But I mean, how do you navigate all of that, the trust, the truthfulness, and being nonpartisan in a world of disinformation?
Alki, do you want to take that first? I'm happy to chime
Um, hey, you put me on the spot. I hope my constituents are not listening.
in.
Um, I was shaking my head trying to sweep this into a general category,
Yeah.
as opposed to just what you're speaking to while still covering it at the same time. I was shaking my head because in general, and I know, especially for all of us who are close here in the DMV, um, trust, disinformation, and everything else that's going on in the environment makes it tricky, with what you say and how you shake hands and all of those types of things. But in general, that's a question, that's a good question too, just for interviews in general. When, maybe a company is in the news and something has happened, or there's some rumors swirling around, or there's some touchy subjects, or maybe they just fired a CEO and hired a new one. Um, I'll be honest, even as a recruiter and thousands of interviews and all of those types of things, each situation is so different. And I think that the approach has to be one of extreme wisdom, and research, also deference. And I'll get to being real and speaking truth in a second, but the approach, and Matt's included today on our call, but from the HR point of view and the recruiter's point of view, people like to talk about red flags. We don't really use those terms, but we know what they are. And there are certain things and words and terms and body language sometimes that we, but more so probably the hiring team, when things are said or certain body language or other things come up, they start backing up immediately. And they, a lot of them, not all of them, some of them come into interviews, they're busy people. They put all their interviews on a Friday. They're just ready to get to the weekend, and they're looking for a way and a reason to toss you or to put a red, to issue a red flag. So it's a tricky thing. I always tell candidates to defer to the tone that you've gotten from the hiring team or the recruiter and their conversation and what they're disclosing and what types of questions they ask. I wouldn't walk into an interview and say, "Hey, so you guys just laid off 1,500 people, huh?" I would let them lead with it. But if you ever find yourself, number one, in a corner, you're asked a question without coaching specifics here, using wisdom to walk your way around the best way to neutrally answer a question or put something on the table. But if you also have a question, there's a part of me too that knows, and I've seen candidates do it, it's called real conversation too. So if there's certain, makers or breakers and you're just flat out like, listen, it's been a great chat so far. I do have one question, hey, I saw this, or I heard this. Is it true? Or, how are you guys navigating that? And there are ways to put it on the table, but you have to know that when you pull the pin on that grenade, it can go a lot of different ways.
So to jump off of that, thank you. That's great, Alki. And so to jump off of that, I would suggest this, and this is not just in this topic, Monica, but sort of in general. And I love, Alki, that you use the word wisdom. Before you say something, whatever it is you're going to say, think to yourself, is this going to be helpful? Is this going to be useful? Is it going to be helpful? Is it going to be useful? Is it going to be helpful for the employer to know something about me to help them make a good decision about whether I'm a good fit? Is it going to be useful for me to ask a question so that I can make a good decision about them, right? So the whole thing about interviewing is to make sure that there's a mutual fit. Sometimes you need information from them. Sometimes they need information from you. Sometimes you need their opinion or their perspective on something, and sometimes you need to share both sides, information, perspectives. If we're just saying something just to say it, I wouldn't say it. If it's going to be helpful and useful, say it. If it's important for them to know your perspective or for you to know their perspective. But I mean, really, in a meaningful way. There are some people, so for example, let's take an NGO or a nonprofit that, putting the whole administration aside, but just sort of in general, every nonprofit and NGO has a mission. Okay. Of course, they're going to want to know that the candidates that apply for the job are aligned with the mission. So they might ask the candidates, so what do you think about our mission? Blah. Now that's very important for them to know how you feel and if you align with their mission. That's what I'm talking about. If there is something important for you to ask or for you to share that is going to help make the marriage, share it or ask it. If it's just extraneous opinion, I want to just share my opinion to share it, or I want to sort of correct misinformation. I would stay away from it. Only say it if it's helpful or useful to them or to you. That I think is where the wisdom comes from.
Yeah. The other thing I would add to that is, and we talk about this a lot on this call also, is again, Cher often says, in terms of the job search, the employer's here and you here, and we try to make sure that you understand you need to be here.
That's right.
So, if you're in a job and some of those kinds of things come up, personally, if it was me, I'd be thinking about, okay, do I really want this job? Am I going to be able to succeed in this job if I have questions or things that just are uncomfortable for me. Um, so that's a big part of, you know, unless you're desperate and you need to take a job to pay the bills, um, you've really got to think about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
no, I had an interview recently and I might have I think I did it good, but I might have bungled it. You know, my dad actually had a stroke 3 days before. And so I thought about canceling the interview because, I was kind of flustered. But, I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, if your dad has a stroke right before you have a job interview, should you table it or should you not table it? I mean, should you say
I
something?
don't think any of us could answer that for you, Monica. That is obviously a very personal
He's doing
decision.
better, by the way. But yeah,
Listen,
you're like you're having a job interview, and your dad might die.
look, I obviously, again, that's totally personal. We can't advise on that. Here's what I will say. All of us who've recruited on this call is that recruiters are human beings. Okay. They understand life happens, especially when it comes to family. Um, I would say in general, if something, an emergency, what people will understand when you tell them what it is. But again, that is a very personal decision. And I would say if it has to do with you, especially in your own health, again, you have to be a little more judicious because, of course, you don't want any discrimination there. But even so, I would say that if something happens that is in the category of an emergency or life-threatening, any of those things, employers are very respectful. Now, of course, which I know you would, Monica, but you'd be follow up and you're responsive and you reschedule as soon as you can, all of those things. But recruiters are human beings. They understand situations happen. If you're not able to be in presence of mind, that is certainly something to consider. But again, not to advise you on it, but just to say in general that would.
I probably messed it up. It wasn't like I needed to be at the hospital bedside, but I think my head wasn't totally
Sure,
there.
of course, of course.
Understandable. Yeah.
Very, very.
I, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna have to jump off the call. It was very nice to meet everyone, and I'm really glad to hear from the group. Thank you so much for having me here today.
You're welcome, Matt. Thanks for
Welcome,
joining
Matt.
us.
Yeah, join us anytime, Matt.
Yeah,
Thank
welcome.
you.
Love to have you.
Take care.
Um,
Bye-bye.
bye. John, actually, did you have a question?
Not really a question. It's more of a statement. I used to be a senior psychological operations NCO for an information operations company, but I also grew up in a political family. When you're interviewing or you're thinking what company you want to work for, it's the culture of that company. And I used to also be an affirmative action equal opportunity representative trained by the OPM, Office of Personnel Management. I've been asked questions that Monica, you were talking about USAID. I've worked with USAID overseas. I've seen the good, the positive, and the negative of USAID. Okay. So to me, it comes down to a question of what I was put there. As a member of the service, I have to be truthful. It comes down to character, values, and beliefs. It's as simple as that. And it's whether I want to work for a corporation like that, or I want to work with this group of people or this person or boss. This is values and beliefs reflect my values and beliefs. And if they do not, then I think there's a parting of the ways, and you have to ask yourself if that's really an organization which you wish to work for, regardless of administration. Okay. I've been through several administrations, both sides of the aisles. Okay. So this one administration will come and go, just like the last administration, and the next one will come and go. But as a country, we need to move forward. And I do a lot of community organization, things like that. And it does come down to human context and knowing the people you disagree with, and maybe going out and find out why you disagree with them or why they feel the way they do. I used to do this a lot overseas with the enemies of this country. Okay. And finding out why they hate America. And a lot of times I found myself agreeing with them. So to sit here and say, hey, look, you got a job thing. Yeah, I help a lot of people find jobs around here. I joined this out of curiosity what's going on today. Okay. But you have to find the corporation, the people you're targeting your job search, and the organizations you're targeting your job search. Do they reflect your values and beliefs and something that you can support? The younger generations, that's what they want. They want a corporation that can support and has a purpose bigger than just earning a paycheck. That's all I wanted to say, Sharon.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Yeah,
Well,
that's really helpful.
No, I appreciate the pep talk. I mean, there's so much disinformation, like the condoms to Gaza and the, using it for Molotov cocktails. I mean, that's like totally imaginary. The condoms for Gaza were for, I think, Gaza, Mozambique, and it had to do with AIDS. And so,
So again, Monica, is it helpful and useful, right, for
yeah,
you to ask or share? And to John's point, if there's something that you feel that you
yeah,
need to share, but otherwise, we should probably leave some of that just to the news headlines, right?
right.
Think about that job and that organization and what you feel is important to share or to ask to help you make a good decision and to help them make a good decision. I would keep it pretty focused around that.
Yeah.
I, I add to that too, and appreciate that candidness, John, because it, on the one hand, there's a lot of people, and I think it has a lot to do with career level too, and experience, and all of that, and a lot of it can deal with the climate, whatever the climate may be, that some people go in, saying, "Hey, I'm not going to make any waves. Let me just stick to keep this interview and make sure that I score the points that I need so I can move on to the next round." There's that. Then there's people who, to John's point, at the end of the day, where are you in your career? Where's this opportunity? If you have questions, you ask those questions. And most people who are extremely proactive about their job search and also aware of where they are career-wise, and I'm saying this as a recruiter. Shira can back this up, Vern, as well. I've told every candidate that I could, or I've treated every interview I think that I've ever given in my life as a conversation. I'm an adult. This person's an adult. I don't care if they were an intern or they were a CEO candidate. I do my best to make it a conversation. And I've let every candidate know to this day, you can talk to me. You can be real. Now, we might only have 45 minutes or 30 minutes, or might not talk about everything. But to John's point, it does come down to you as the candidate to ultimately, and Shira's point, is this what's useful for me to make the decision that I need to make, that this is the right opportunity for me to pursue. This is the right organization for me to pursue it. And this is the right time. Again, if there's legitimate questions that are helpful and useful to Shira's point, that like you've got to know, like, hey, I've got to know, am I going to get shot at work? Something like that. If you want to know, are you safe or whatever, there's still ways to ask it. But at the end of the day, is it helpful? Is it useful? It's a real conversation. Feel free to ask real questions, but also know that whatever you bring up, it may uncover other things, and you should be prepared for every question that could be asked or responded to in during your interview.
And that goes even beyond political beliefs and mission, but just culture questions, even to John's point, right? I mean, it could have to do with work-life balance. It could have to do with internal communication. It could have to do with camaraderie and collegiality or lack thereof, and the departmental culture, the supervisory stuff. I mean, all these things. It's very important for you to come into an interview thinking through the things that are important to you to make sure it's a good culture fit for you. Not just that you're a good culture fit for them. That's on their side to ask about questions about culture, but for you, your side. Remember, Vern was saying, you are the other side of this equation, equal. So think about those things. Don't just be a good candidate with your hands in your lap and just answer the questions. No, you are the other side of the equation. Ask, but you have to know what questions you want to ask. You have to think about what's important to you, not just the job description, not just the mission of the organization, but people, there's an old expression in HR, it says people join companies but leave managers. Well, people join companies, leave managers, they leave cultures, they leave coworkers, they leave you think you want the job because of the job and maybe the mission. There's all those other people stuff, right? That actually is the reason why a lot of people leave. Think about those things in advance because we've all been working for a long more than a minute here. We've been in cultures. What's important to you? What kinds of questions will get at the kinds of needs that you have? Not to say that they're going to be fully transparent, right? They're putting on their best foot forward too, just like you are. So they might be a little bit cagey, but you can be listening, reading between the lines. When you ask somebody about their corporate culture, if they are really a best place to work, they're going to be jumping through the Zoom. They'll be, oh my gosh, let me tell you how amazing we are. And if they're not, they'll probably slow the roll, take a breath. Well, we're working on blah, blah, blah. We're aspiring toward blah, blah, blah. And they're going to let you know by not saying all the detail, kind of where they're actually at. So be listening for those softer cues, and then hopefully that'll help you make a better decision.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why it's so hard for me right now, because in general, everyone who works as a U.S. agency for international development contractor, are mission-driven people who want to make the world a better place. They're collaborative, they're not out, to get a bonus or make big bucks. And so, it just, and we all know each other. So, so now I have to go to another sector where I don't know everybody, and you can't count on the same culture. And so, it would be great to find some USA clone, but
There are a lot of
the good
missions.
side of it, not what, the bad side that, I think, what was his name? John, mentioned, but, I mean, none of it's perfect, but, yeah. And I know that the USA to the military collides. Like a long time ago, I worked on a project. They were, the military wanted um, some cement factory in Bosnia to be funded by USAID, and USA didn't want to fund it. There was a corruption issue why they didn't want to do it. And so like there was, and so like one time I went to a talk at American University, and they had a general talking about how USAID wouldn't fund the cement factory, and I was involved in that project as a young person. And so, but I know, and I don't understand it from the military side, but anyway,
Thanks, Monica. Actually, I'm looking at time, and I know that Karen has a question, and then we're going to wrap up.
Hey, Shira. I just wanted to say I once went to an interview where I was a very good candidate with a root canal the day before. And no matter how I tried to be myself, I really wasn't. And I happened to meet the person who got the job. It's better to be upfront. I mean, I did tell them, but it's just better to be upfront when you're not completely yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Huh?
Point.
Good point. Yeah, got to make those decisions in the moment. Sometimes, hindsight.
Sometimes you think you're better and you can get
right.
by it, but you can't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the call. For those of you who are new, I do offer a short prayer call for those of you who would like to stay on the call after we're done. And I just to let you know, and Monica knows this, I am behind the scenes working on a group for the federally disrupted workforce. It's called Higher Vision. It's going to be a networking group. Not quite sure exactly when it's going to roll, because I had a lot of things going on, so I have to slow it down a little bit. But that is my intention, is to create a group just for the federally disrupted employees and nonprofits and government contractors to find a safe space to network. So stay tuned for that, and I will be letting everybody know when that's going to be launching. All right. So I'll go ahead and wrap up the formal call right now. We'll look forward to seeing you folks in a couple of weeks. And again, for those who want to stay on the prayer call, you're more than welcome. Thanks all. Have a blessed day.